Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again. And that must mean that I am Professor Robert E.G. Black, and this is the Groundhog Day Project.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
It's a thing where the same day keeps happening.
Time.
I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
The last revision is what counts, apparently.
Minute 51 of Groundhog Day. I'm going to have to go to war with the time loop math truthers and, well, the organizers of the local festivities in 2014 in Woodstock, Illinois. Or rather, I have already gone to war with both of those things. Minute 51 begins. Rita has just, for the second time that we see, told Phil that she studied 19th century French poetry. She finishes the sentences, the minute begins. And rather than, laugh and scoff as he did yesterday, as far as we know, he quotes, "Le fille que j'aimerais sera comme bonne fille, que si bonne fiera, un peu chaque matin." Which means, roughly, I don't have the specific quote in front of me, but in case you are curious, he is basically saying, my love ages like a fine wine. She gets better with age. He is not quoting French poetry. He is quoting a song that is Belgian. Yes, Belgians speak French, so technically it is French, but it is Belgian and it is a song. And as far as we know, Phil was already familiar with this song. Rita says in response, "You speak French." She's not even asking. She's just so surprised. It's just, whoa. You speak French. She's shocked. And what does he say? Being all coy about it. Oui. Now, the people I've been calling time loop math truthers, they take this and are like, he learned French. He's fluent as fuck. And that takes years. Never mind that it doesn't take years for people to be fluent in French. Also, you don't have to be fluent in French to read one French poem. So all he has to do is go to the library, look up French poetry, and then they show him something. Since he found a song lyrics, I'm guessing it's something that Harold Ramis or Danny Rubin was already familiar with. And so maybe they like this song, and that's why they put it in there. I don't know. That doesn't come up as far as I remember, it doesn't come up in the commentary, it doesn't come up in Rubin's book. I think technically this part wasn't in Rubin's book, which his book includes the first version of the script. Phil doesn't learn French. He says 4 lines of lyrics from a song, and then he says oui. Everybody knows oui. And you know what happens if Rita says, say something else? He's probably going to freeze up and maybe say the next line of the song if he's been studying the song today. Or he's going to say something silly like, je m'appelle Phil Connors, Or voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? Insert, what's her name, in Better Off Dead? What's the French exchange student's name? I almost said Mathilde, but Mathilde was a actual French exchange student that I knew briefly back when I was a teenager. Wow, I haven't watched Better Off Dead in a few years. But the guy in there, he tries to, Stalin, the bully, comes on to the French student by quoting song lyrics. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?
Bonjour. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?
Which isn't just the song that you're probably more familiar with that came up later, which was referencing an earlier song. Or was a cover, or whatever. Phil would say something stupid like that, and Rita would be disgusted. But then you know what happens? Tomorrow, he comes in here with Le fille que j'aimerais sera comme bonne fille, que si bonne fiera, un peu chaque matin. And then she's like, you speak French? And he's like, oui. And then she's like, say something else. And he's got a second thing ready. That's the thing. You can't assume that there's any actual learning of French yet. Later in the film, I think we are supposed to assume that he learns to play the piano. I think we are supposed to assume that he learns to ice sculpt really well. We do see that he can ice sculpt really well. We don't see that he can actually play the piano. We see him play 2 songs. I pointed that out before, but I think it is safer to assume that he actually learns to play the piano than it is to assume that he learns French. Because minute 51, we're at that tail end of the adolescent phase, and we're in what I call the date night sequence, where Phil is still just gaming the system. It's A-B testing. Test what works. If it doesn't work, do something else. If that doesn't work, do something else. If it works, stick with it, do the next thing. If that next thing doesn't work, come back the next day and do the first thing, then a new next thing. And just keep doing that until you get the right combination. That is the whole point of this date sequences. He copied her drink. He copied her toast. He said that thing in Rome, and we can assume maybe it just worked the first time. She liked it, or didn't react in a negative way at least, and so he stuck with it. So the math truthers need to stop with the French. The movie does not tell us that Phil learned French. This is all he says in French. Does that mean he didn't learn French? No. But it doesn't mean that he did. And I think if you're trying to calculate it, which you shouldn't be doing, because that's not the fucking point, then you have to accept that you need to take the evidence you are given, not assume evidence not in the record. That's the restaurant. Cut to. Exterior, Gobbler's Knob. It is nighttime. They are making a snowman, pushing a big ball of snow, rolling it, making it bigger. Now I must get ahead of myself. We'll save the scene until after the rant. 2014. I'm in Woodstock, Illinois for the festivities. For Woodstock Willie, looking at where they filmed Groundhog Day for the blog. I go on the walking tour twice. The second time, the guy who's leading the walking tour, who was the location manager for the film, asks me a follow-up question when someone in the crowd asks a question. Because I had an answer and he didn't. So I knew stuff. I had studied. I had notes. I had a folder with me that had a printout of various maps of the town and marked like where the car chase goes so I could see all those intersections and get pictures, and where the second car chase goes so I could see those spots. And I went around to some of the places have plaques, as I've mentioned before. The spot where the hole was with the icy water that Phil steps in the first few times, there's a plaque there. Let's say Bill Murray stepped here, I think it is, and has an outline of his shoe. There is a mark over on the corner that says Ned's Corner, even though it should be the old man's corner. But there's a plaque in the alleyway for the old man, because the alleyway is actually behind the same corner. If you're on the block where the diner is and you go behind it, there's an alleyway, and that's where the old man dies later. And so there's a plaque in there. There's a plaque, I assume there was a plaque on the Opera House noting it as the hotel, but I don't remember the plaque. Maybe I only saw a few of the plaques. Pretty sure there's more. But I went around and took pictures of various locations. I took a picture of the exterior of where the mayor's office is, because that's what they used for the psychiatrist. So I knew the locations. I knew what I was talking about. And you can see it in this minute, and I will point it out in a moment. Where is I'm asking you, though you can't answer, where does this snowball fight take place? It's in the town square. Obviously, we can see the monument in the middle, which we would have seen in wide shots. And in the background, we can see the billboard that is on the stage at Gobbler's Knob. Also in the background, we can see the frickin' Pennsylvania Hotel. Those angles mean if we're seeing the center of the square and the hotel in the background, the hotel is off. That is the southwest quadrant of the square. If we can see the southwest quadrant and we can see it past the middle, we are in the northeast quadrant of the square. But they put a cone marking the snowball location in the southeast quadrant. I pointed that out to the tour guide. They didn't know enough to say whether I was right or wrong. And I'm like, yeah, I'm right, but whatever. I had met one of the people who was in charge. I forget his name now. I talked about him in the blog. I complained about him. I also happened to sit at the same table as him at the Groundhog Day breakfast, which I'll get to that in a moment. First, the problem. They had marked it in the wrong location. Tour guide couldn't do anything about it, because he didn't remember the shots. I literally had screenshots on my iPad, which was in my backpack, which was on my back, walking around on the walking tour and seeing all this stuff. I had the folder and the iPad with me. Actually, it was 2014, so probably in order to see the photo, I would have had to go to Starbucks and connect to Wi-Fi to show the photo.
Jumping in from editing to point out that actually I had the movie already downloaded on the iPad just in case I was ever without Wi-Fi and needed to watch the movie during that year. So I could have just opened it up, jumped to minute 51, minute 52, and shown the angle. That's how I got the screen grabs that I'm about to talk about for the breakfast.
But then I downloaded it later so that I could show it to... Oh, I didn't say where I had met him. I sat with him at the table at the Groundhog Day breakfast, which was after the prognostication on Sunday, February 2nd. On February 1st, I went to the bowling alley and bowled, and you know who was there in the bowling alley was that guy, and I'm waiting for an alley assignment to say something about who I am, and I think he knew I was coming, or one of the people there knew who I was, because I had contacted someone about being there. Or I said something then. I don't remember the exact, so go find it in the blog, February 2014, I talked about this. But he immediately asked me a trivia question, and it was funny because it was fairly early in the morning. It was like 9 or 8 even. And so I didn't know the answer offhand. He asked something about Alice. And now I can tell you, Alice, she came from Ireland as a baby. But lived in Erie most of her life, came from Ireland as a baby, yeah. Those are the two things we get about her. But I didn't immediately come with that. He also is the guy who hosted the trivia on stage at the breakfast. Fortunately, I didn't look like a fool up in front of the entire audience in that question. I immediately knew the answer. It was, how much does Rita pay for Phil? So I took the first trivia question. I was on stage. He had called me up with this whole thing where he's like, who here has seen Groundhog Day? And like everyone in the crowd puts their hand up, obviously. Otherwise, why are they at the Groundhog breakfast? Why are they in Woodstock on that particular day for that event? And then he's like, who's seen it more than once? Or who's seen it 5 times? And it's fewer hands, but it's still quite a lot, because these are people from Woodstock. They're used to this. They probably watch it every year. And then who's seen it more than 20 times? And there's only a handful of hands that go up. Then who's seen it over 100 times? And I think it was me, and I think there was still one more. Who's seen it over 200 times, or whatever? And I was the only person with my hand up. And he's like, so I'd like to introduce you all to, and he introduced me, brought me up on stage to start the trivia contest. And the question was, how much does Rita pay for Phil? And it is $339.88, right? I'm not 100% on that now, but also I'm not watching the movie every day now. I still know tons of the dialogue from it, could quote it, whatever. I could even search right now because I have the transcript open, but I'm not going to. If I'm wrong, then I look like a fool, and I already looked like a fool. Why correct it? See, now I want to know. 88. Oh, I was right. $339.88. Oh, good. I remembered. This is good. But they had put the cone in the wrong place. Okay, we're there. We're caught up. At the breakfast, I get sat at the special table because he knows he's going to bring me up on stage to start the trivia contest. Also at the special table, I've talked before, was Richard Hensel, who is DJ number 1, and had recited both DJ 1 and DJ 2's parts at Gobbler's Knob, at the gazebo at the Woodstock Willie prognostication, and then he also recited it on stage at the breakfast, doing both parts. So I talked to him for a bit, wrote about it in the blog, talked about it here before as well. Also at that table was location manager, whose name I'm hitting a blank on right now. I even have his business card at home because he gave it to me. He was going to help me try to get in touch with Harold Ramis. But then Harold Ramis died like a couple weeks later, which was sad. That location manager is currently I believe, still the location manager for popular TV things from Chicago. Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med, or whatever those 3 are called. I don't watch any of those, but I know he's the location guy for that. But he was the location manager for this film. He's the one who found this town square, and, they went and looked at it, and this is what they wanted. They wanted a contained visual, not the real Gobbler's Knob, which is outside town. But anyway, at the breakfast, also there was Shulman, who wrote the article about me and Danny Rubin that was published in The Believer a year later. He was hoping to get it to the New Yorker because he'd been published in the New Yorker before, but I guess they didn't care or weren't that excited about it. And so it ended up not getting published until a year later in The Believer, an online magazine. It's called The Accidental Swami, and it is about me and Danny Rubin coming to Groundhog Day on that particular day in Woodstock. Beating around the bush, let's get to the war. So at the breakfast, I talk to the guy whose name I can't remember, but he's one of the people in charge of the festivities in Woodstock. And I tell him the cone was in the wrong place. And he's like, no, that's where it is. I'm like, no, you have it over by the small gazebo in the wrong corner of the thing. And I show him the freaking screenshot from this minute that shows we're looking past the center of the square over to the hotel. You cannot get that angle from over by the small gazebo. It's physically impossible. Does he care? No. Did I maybe get in his head and he cared later? I think so. Because I checked the next year. I think the very next year I couldn't find it, but I looked up on their website. They have like a picture of the brochure. And the brochure has the map with the locations marked. And I think the next year it still had the same mark. But by like 2 years later, that mark was gone. It's not like they corrected it. They just removed it. I was like, that's weird. Why not just correct it? But I haven't been back there, so I don't know what they're doing now. I think I've checked again since. Occasionally people stick pictures of the new brochures online because there's a new one every year. Because the events change depending on who's there. I believe Steuben Tobolowsky was there this year. The year I was there, Danny Rubin was there, and Richard Hensel was there. And so in the brochure it would have the different events that happen, including there was a Saturday afternoon, there was a, what did they call it? Like an open forum with Danny Rubin where people could ask questions. And that was cool. I talked to him. I had already talked to him before that. He went on the walking tour that Saturday. And I talked to him when we were near the spot where Phil steps in the ice. But he was going through a whole thing. I've talked about it in this show before. I've talked about it in the blog a lot. He was dealing with his father was actually sick and was actually about to die. So he had to be there. He had to answer questions. But on the walking tour, he was kind of staying away from the crowd. I believe I called him standoffish, which then later, this story's all over the place, but it's about to be done. Sometime later, I guess the next year, because I called him standoffish, and I believe that was something that Shulman quoted in The Accidental Swami that was published a year later. And so at that point, I then wrote in the blog again about that article and my experience of the day and meeting Danny Rubin. He read that blog entry and sent me a message on Facebook talking about what he was going through at the time. It was really cool because like an actual like exchange of polite information between the two of us. Like we're friends on Facebook still. And if you have been following the show since it started, he was in episode 1 of season 1. He was the guest. One of my students was listening to it yesterday and was like, what are you doing? They looked up my podcast and I hear, we're supposed to be working on speeches and I hear my voice off in the corner, you know. Anyway, the scene, since this is already bordering on the longest episode and I haven't even gotten to the rest of the minute. Gobbler's Knob, we are in the northeast quadrant of the knob, or of the square. I think technically Gobbler's Knob is just that little mound where the stage is, but it's iffy because this isn't the real Gobbler's Knob. Phil says, I haven't done this since I was a kid. He's basically already seems to have some sort of script as to what he's saying, but he hasn't memorized it yet, I don't think. I think this might be the first time they're doing this. Rita says, me neither, it's fun. And then Phil, because he's got to put more on it, says, it's good, clean fun. I hope that one day I can do this with my own children. And then he pulls out frickin' carrot and coal or whatever from his pockets.
What has he got in its pockets?
And Rita's like, where did you get that? And this is actually funny. This is nice. And it's cute. In an actual rom-com, this moment would be cute, that he prepared for this. And he says, well, I went over to the snowman shop, which obviously a lie. They don't have that. To get a couple pieces of coal. Well, in this town, you probably go anywhere there's a fireplace and maybe find some. If they got a hardware store, you might be able to get some charcoal at least. Or are those just black rocks? I'm not sure. We don't get a close-up on the snowman. Carrot, just go to whatever store and buy a carrot. Keep it in the pocket for later. So sometime today he went to 1 or 2 stores. And maybe more. Just to get this moment right. But you know what's going to happen tomorrow? He's going to know exactly which store to go to get the coal, exactly which store to go to get the carrot, and it's going to be much faster, much easier. Every errand that he does gets easier with each iteration. And that makes it so that he can do all of these things in a better way. And he can do everything more and more efficiently. That's the time loop. That's gaming the system, as you make your own existence easier and easier. And then the kids show up. Random kids throwing snowballs at strangers. This town has problems. They are over by the memorial, which is oh my God. Season 1 or Season 2, I talked about this. It is a memorial for, is it a Civil War memorial? Or is it a World War II memorial? I think it's a World War II memorial. Why am I not remembering now? But literally right where those kids are, next to the memorial, is where I was standing for the prognostication in 2014. Was right by that railing, because I got there before a lot of the crowd and just wanted a good angle, good spot, and I could lean against the railing a bit if I was standing for too long, and the ground was frickin' cold, so definitely needed to lean a little bit. They throw snowballs, and Phil says, "Hey, an assassin! I'll protect you, Your Majesty." Maybe this isn't the first time he's doing that. Would he think of that the first time? Maybe. Did he hire these kids to throw the snowballs? Conspiracy. Yeah. Conspiracy theory in place. New headcanon? Maybe. Maybe. I'm not sure. But I like it. I like the idea, and I don't think I've ever put this out there before. That this isn't random kids throwing random snowballs. Phil arranged this, and he did prepare this script already. He knew she'd ask about the carrot, or he was ready for her to ask about the carrot. He wouldn't know she's going to ask until tomorrow. He knew the kids were going to throw snowballs either because it already happened, and this isn't the first time they'd been doing this, or he arranged it. And I kind of like that idea that he would go that far as to, like, he sees kids nearby one night, and he goes and finds them. Maybe they're loitering by the liquor store, or local, like, convenience store, where he went and bought a single carrot. And so he's like, "You want to earn some cash?" And he's got a lot of cash. He could pay a lot for this. And he pays him to make it believable. "I shall die for you. You shall not take her. Find cover, my lady." As this is going on, we get various voices from the kids as Phil exchanges fire with them, snowballs back and forth. We get a yeah, a hey, nice arm, and then we're getting the start of a sentence into next minute, getting some, they're going to say good ones. Anyway, this might be the longest episode, and sorry about that. The wars were convoluted, and explaining the context for them now is even harder. You should know even from this season that I don't particularly like a lot of the IMDb goofs, and one of those is always that he learns French, and, well, I don't think they put that as a goof. I think people put that in as trivia, which I'm like, that's not trivia. Your stupid math and your calculations is not trivia. It's just your stupid math. Time loop math truthers need to go. Get a hobby. And the rest of you, while you're waiting for the next episode, go get a hobby or go perform whatever your favorite hobby is. Do something good, do something you enjoy. Or do something new that you hope you're going to enjoy. Because the everyday humdrum drudgery of most of our lives sucks. Test the waters, game the system.
You were gonna say that.
This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops.
What is wrong in the end which never comes? Or which comes again and again, lapping, like waves.
Since the Big Bang set everything in motion, everything that happens in this universe has to be the way it is. Particles unfolding the way they're destined to.
How do you sleep at night? You've never seen Groundhog Day?
Yeah, you know Groundhog Day is not a documentary.
Remember when Groundhog Day was just a movie?